chats. Let us know where you're joining us from. We're going to get started in just 1 minute.
Hello. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I know a lot of people are still continuing to enroll and log on. My name is Aaron Dworkin. I'm the CEO of the National Summer Learning Association. We're so honored and grateful that you've taken time today and hopefully tomorrow to join our 3rd annual Summer Planning Boot Camp. The summer is upon us. And so many of us are getting ready and working hard, and we're going to hear from real experts and practitioners, acclaimed practitioners who are going to share best practices and updates and resources and tools we could all use to make our summer programs as amazing as we want and can be for so many students. So we have a lot of people to thank who have helped bring this event to fruition. But we want to really thank not only the U.S. Department of Education, who you're going to hear from momentarily, and their Engage Every Student initiative, but as well as each of these sessions. We have 4 sessions over the next 2 days. on the hottest topics that people are asking the National Summer Learning Association to talk about and to share information on. And so, but in particular, each of these sessions has been sponsored by great partners that you're going to hear from in the next 2 days: Flying Classroom, ProSolve, Varsity Tutors, and the Wallace Foundation. In addition, we have, as you could see on the screen, lots of organizational partners around the country who have also helped come and organize and present this and lend time and effort to make this possible. So just want to say thank you to all of them and all of you. We also want to just acknowledge that we are in a great moment of summer learning and focus on summer learning and making sure that every young person, as our mission says, should have the opportunity to participate in and benefit from a high quality summer learning experience every year. We are most focused on the most vulnerable students who may not have access to these programs otherwise. And so many of us are doing great things on this. A few other events and activities coming up we want to just make sure you know about will be our National Summer Learning Week, a chance for you to highlight what you're doing, invite policymakers, the media, visitors, and to really celebrate the great work you do. There'll be events all across the country. That'll be July 10th through 14th. And then we have year-round professional summer learning communities on specific topics. We have more than 10. We hope you'll go to our website, check them out, and to find a topic that's most relevant to you and your staff. So you can join in peer conversations, and that's throughout the year. And then we'll mention a little bit more about this, but we're going to be opening up registration today and tomorrow for our National Summer Learning Summit. It is NSLA's 30th anniversary. Last year we sold out. We're going to be doing it again in Washington, D.C., October 9th to 11th. So we'll share more information about that as well. I just want to also give the context. When we start with the why, as the famous author Simon Sinek says we should, just to remind ourselves why this work matters so much and why we're taking time. Even though we like to say summer starts in September and we're here in March, now it's really top of mind, and the programs are starting, and the kids are coming, and the staff are getting hired, and the parents need to be engaged, and the teachers and the school partners and community partners all need to be engaged. So the work is right upon us, right in front of us right now. But the why, we like to say at NSLA, is one, summer is a time for improvement, not only just for young people, but also for adults and the staff in your programs. And it's every great summer program also doubles up as staff training. It's also one of the most innovative times in education, and great new ideas and innovations you may have before you scale them school district-wide, school-wide, community, county, statewide. It's good to test them out and make sure they work and evaluate them in your summer program. And we see lots of innovation, and you're going to hear a lot about innovation. The last 2 points we like to say is about interconnectedness. Summer is a time to create partnerships, to build partnerships, to practice partnerships, get good at them, and if they go well, to extend them throughout the school year. So we see a lot of that, and we see lots of folks coming together who may not have always enough time during the school year, but in the summer you can bring them together. And the last I is about impact. And I just want to share that, we're talking about impact that you're going to hear both at a policy level, at a federal, state, and city level, but also at a program level, and most importantly, at a personal level, and the impact we all have on young people and how we can create summers that'll change their trajectories of their life. If you need help and want some additional support on your staff training and best practices, we have Broderick Clark, who you're going to hear from later. But the whole NSLA team and our Army of Field Consultants are happy to help you with anything you need in the next few months as you get ready. Go to the next slide. And then another effort we have underway that we want to make sure everyone gets involved with is called discoversummer.org. It is a national website filled with resources for families, but most importantly, it is a search engine database. Our goal this year is to have 50,000 programs in this database that families all across the country can locate and identify and find programs that work for them, that they can sign up for and get their young people into. And then we will be complementing this website with a national advertising campaign with our partners at Clear Channel and iHeartRadio. So there'll be billboards and radio ads running over the next few months across the country to make more families aware of this resource. So we want to make sure that you go to that website, hit that red button, and sign your program up so it can be found. Next slide. And a couple sneak peeks of what's coming at our big conference. Our conference is a real, signature event just like this one. And again, it's going to be at the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C. We're going to have amazing speakers just like we'll have on this boot camp. But you can see we have Daryl McDaniels from Run DMC, who's also the founder of the Felix organization, runs summer programs for foster youth. Suzanne McCormick, the CEO of the YMCA USA. We have Dr. David Schuler, who's the new executive director of the Superintendents Association, one of our partners here today. And then we're very excited to also announce that we will have the author, New York Times best-selling book of How the Word Is Passed, Clint Smith, speaking along with Rahima Ellis, who's the national education correspondent for NBC Nightly News. So these are just some of the people who are already planning to come. We hope you will make it to come and join us and put it on your calendar as well. And one other little special treat, if you go to the next slide, this year, for those of you who were with us last year, we've created a one-year tradition where we take everyone to a great museum and do a night at the museum. Last year, we were at a museum called the Planet Word Museum. This year, we have rented out the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and we're going to be doing a whole private tour and reception. So that'll be really fun, and we hope everyone will come. And I think it's relevant to all our work. So with that said, I think what I'm going to do is now our first session, and we have 4 hot topics. And the first session is going to be really exploring the latest trends and updates on research and policy that affect all our work, and kind of give us a good grounding of what is going on in the country right now. And we're very fortunate that not only is the Wallace Foundation supporting NSLA and our entire field, but they've been very focused on this issue for a long time. We're very excited to have Ann Stone, their senior research officer, who knows so much and has been working on these issues for so long. And so I'd like to welcome Ann, and we're just to get your thoughts. Welcome, Ann, because Wallace has been doing so much work on this issue and investing so much for so long. And now that many more people have joined you, not only do we want to say thank you, but really to hear your perspective, and you see so much. So if it's okay, Ann, let me ask you to just start us, what is most important in summer learning right now from your perspective?
Well, one thing I'll say at the outset is how exciting it is to see summer learning getting so much attention these last few years. And we know from the research that summer programs done well can produce benefits for youth in terms of academic learning, social and emotional development, and physical and mental health. And these benefits are more important than ever right now, since so many young people are still grappling with all the disruption and trauma and stress from the pandemic. The good news is we know how to design high-quality summer programs, and this includes programs that combine academics and enrichment, which is one type of program that's of special interest right now. And through an initiative a few years ago called the National Summer Learning Project, we learned a tremendous amount about what it takes to implement strong summer programs that support students academically while also offering a range of enrichment activities. We learned things like how it's important to structure the program so it provides sufficient time for student learning, how to be intentional about hiring effective instructional staff while also creating a nurturing climate, and best practices for recruiting students so they participate in the summer program and attend regularly. So our research partner in this work captured these insights in a report called Getting to Work on Summer Learning. They're also included in an online summer learning toolkit. So there are resources and tools that are available to help program leaders incorporate these evidence-based practices. And I'll just say that we know there are many different types of summer programs. Some have academic goals, others focus on other things, youth employment, social emotional well-being, and other goals. Many of these have their own evidence of effectiveness. And so whatever type of program you're offering, there are resources that can help program leaders incorporate strong practices, provide more impactful summer programs, and NSLA's website is a great place to start to find those resources.
Thank you, Ann. And I just want to also mention, as you're mentioning resources, we're going to be dropping into the chat and also sending out to everyone who signed up all these links to these various resources later. So not everyone has to scribble so fast to catch all of this, but thank you. So let me ask you then as a follow-up, so what other research should we really be aware of? We're going to hear from a panel shortly, but as you're tracking what people are doing, what are you finding?
Right, and it's a very exciting time to be in the space because there's a lot of wonderful research underway, including what we'll hear a little bit later on this hour. I'll mention two projects that we're supporting that may be of interest to this group. So the first is an effort in Texas, where the state made a major policy commitment to summer learning back in 2019. And the state is providing training and tools and other resources to help districts and their partners put on strong summer programs with a focus on evidence-based practice. So this is a great example of what a state agency can do, a state education agency that's supportive around summer. Now, much of the evidence base that's being used in this Texas work is drawn from the existing knowledge base about summer learning. Except in this work, they're focusing on a much broader range of school districts that have been studied in the past. So this includes 60 school districts, some from rural areas, others in urban areas, some very, very small districts to up to the large urbans, and some charter schools. So they're exploring what kinds of adaptations make sense for the specific needs of students and the specific contexts, so that we have a much broader range of evidence-based practices that can be tapped by the larger field. And we'll be sharing the first lessons from that work later this year. The second project I wanted to mention is a large-scale research effort called the National Summer Learning and Enrichment Study. This is led by a research team at WestStat. The WestStat study is documenting how states and districts around the country launched their summer learning and enrichment efforts following the rollout of the federal recovery funding. So the study is looking at things like what goals states and districts prioritize and how they leverage financial and partnership resources. This is a three-part study. A few months ago, we released the first part, which was focused on districts. And it was exciting to see that 94% of districts around the country offered summer programming in 2021. We also learned that school districts served about 18% of their students with summer programming, that learning recovery was the most common summer programming approach used by 75% of the districts, but more than half supplemented academic programming with social emotional learning. And some 41% of districts engaged community partners to help deliver the summer programs. So later this spring, we'll release the next part of the study, which focuses on how states responded to this call to action around summer, and the full report will come out this fall.
That's really exciting. Thank you, Ann. And it just shows the moment we're in where there's more attention and more investment and more focus on how to leverage and utilize summer learning programs than ever before. And I think something that we're all focused on is how do we keep this momentum going even when the emergency funding runs out. So in your opinion, to wrap up, what do you think now is the most important topic for programs to be focused on right now? And what's your thoughts on what the opportunity is going forward for all of us?
Yeah, so three things. Like you said, summer is getting more attention than ever. So policymakers are paying attention right now, and that's fantastic. So there's an opportunity to deepen their understanding of what can be accomplished during the summer months. So today, March 29th, is the perfect time to start planning site visits for policymakers in your area, to make your work visible to decision makers. Introduce them to children and their parents at your summer program so they can hear firsthand what a difference the programs are making. Give them a speaking role when they visit and get a story in the press, and then back that up with data. So you're using a strategic combination of data and stories to make your case. The second thing you mentioned, Aaron, is we know that the federal recovery funds will be sunsetting. So it's critical that districts and their partners are thinking about sustainability. The good news is there are many sources of funding that are available that can be blended and braided for summer programming. And Wallace just released a guide last year on using federal funds to support both summer learning programs and after-school programs. And NSLA's website has guidance on funding as well. So my final point is that no one has to do this alone. Summer learning is a goal that many different agencies and stakeholders can rally around. So there's an opportunity for providers and agencies to collaborate around summer learning and better serve more youth in their communities. And we've seen this happen in many places. And in fact, RAND released a report on this very topic in 2021 called Summer for All. And this kind of citywide collaboration was also a key recommendation in the National Academy's report on summertime. And they called on local organizations and agencies to coordinate their efforts, especially around youth who were not currently being well served during the summer months. So I'll just, step back, Erin, and say, I think the biggest opportunity is to keep learning from one another, tapping the existing knowledge base and the experience of people like everyone on this webinar. And I just personally want to thank you, Erin, and everyone at NSLA for all the work that you're doing for nearly 3 decades now, and for the expertise and the resources and tools your organization is continuing to build and share through this boot camp.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you again to the Wallace Foundation. And I love your point you also made about how none of us are alone and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a great research base for us to build on, and having boot camps like this where people could share their knowledge and make sure people are learning from each other, building on best practices, avoiding pitfalls that maybe others have faced. So thank you again for your deep investment and your continued partnership to all of us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator for this session, Dr. Sharonda Witter-Fleming, who I've gotten to know so well, who is now the Out of School Time Fellow at the United States Department of Education. I think we just heard from Anne that there is focus on summer learning from the highest levels, from the White House and the U.S. Department of Education, obviously to the grassroots. So Sharonda's been a leader in our field for many years. Many of us know her, but this Engage Every Student initiative she's helping lead is trying to get all of us working together to support all the kids in the United States. So very excited to hear from you, Sharonda. I'll turn it over to you and your amazing panel. Sharonda.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Erin, for the warm welcome and introduction. As you mentioned, the U.S. Department of Education and Secretary Cardona launched the Engage Every Student initiative back in July of 2022, recognizing the positive impact that after-school and summer learning programs have on youth that are engaged in them. Although we know that there are millions of students that are benefiting from the programs that each and every person on the call is designing and implementing every summer and during the after-school hours, we also know that there are nearly 25 million students nationwide that don't have access to programs due to barriers, including the cost of programs being too burdensome for their families, transportation challenges, or the mere lack of available programs in their communities. And we have to do something to address this unmet demand, and that is why the Engage Every Student initiative was created. Next slide, please. Through the initiative, the department has partnered with 5 outstanding organizations as listed on the slide, including the National Summer Learning Association, to model at the federal and national level what we believe is a solution and strategy to address the unmet demand at the local level. And that strategy is intentional collaboration and partnerships across sectors. Next slide, please. So if you are joining us today and you just learned about the Engage Every Student initiative, we invite you to join us as an ally or by making a pledge to help us ensure that every student that wants to engage in an after-school program or your amazing summer learning program has every opportunity to do so. The link to join us in this effort will be in the chat. So now it is my absolute pleasure to participate in this year's Summer Planning Bootcamp and to serve as the moderator of Session 1, which is titled Policy and Research Update, What the Data Tells Us for 2023. And it brings me great joy to introduce to each of you our amazing speakers. First up, we will have Emma Dorn, Senior Knowledge Expert at McKinsey & Company. Joining her, we will have Dr. Gil Nome and Dr. Patty Allen from the Institute for the Study of Resilience in Youth at McLean Hospital. Next up, we have Kate Klaba, Director of Government Affairs at the National PTA. And last, but certainly not least, we have Eric Peterson, Senior Vice President of Policy at the After School Alliance. So we're going to start this session with a research perspective and then transition to a policy perspective before we pull it all together. So with that, Emma, we will start with you.
Hi, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me to share a little bit of our research. Would love to share today the results of some research we actually did back in May of last year, right before previous summer, but I think is really speaking to some of the challenges today as students are facing and that summer learning can potentially help with. And so we did a survey, and maybe I should introduce myself first. Hi, I just saw that at the chat. Though, Sharada, you did a great job introducing me, but I am Emma Dawn, I'm Senior Knowledge Expert at McKinsey, and my research over the past 3 years has really focused on the impact of the pandemic on student learning, but now coming into how do we help students recover. And so wanted to focus a little bit on this survey that we had taken and share that a little with you. We did a survey of 260 district administrators across a variety of US districts, urban, rural, high and low poverty, across the United States. And we're continuing to work hand in hand with states and many of the top 50 districts. And I think we need to start with an understanding of where students are at this moment in time. And though the pandemic may be over, though actually I did 2 COVID tests on my 9-year-old in the last week, so maybe the pandemic isn't over. At least from a school perspective, students are thankfully mostly back in school. The impacts of the pandemic continue to resonate and ripple out amongst our students in schools. I have 3 kids. I have a 16, 13, and actually just turned 10 2 days ago. Year old, and I can just see in their lives the impact of the pandemic continuing to have resonance. And as we look kind of across the country, we saw 3 big challenges facing students, and you can jump to the next page. The first is that many students are still struggling with learning delays through the time that was out of school or in remote learning through the pandemic. If you look at the latest NAEP data, we calculated that there are 17 million students who have more than half a year of pandemic-related learning delay. And that's kind of on average across the different subjects. But it's not just about academics. And I think this is something we've already heard in the folks we've already heard from today. The impact of the pandemic went way beyond academics, and therefore some of the solutions that we need to be putting together need to go beyond academics as well. There are 16 million students currently in US schools who need mental health support and aren't receiving it. And there are more who may have had impact from the pandemic, but who don't have specific mental health conditions. And then finally, chronic absenteeism. So we all know with summer, one of the biggest challenges is getting students to show up to summer learning. But this is becoming an increasingly large challenge with day-to-day school as well. Chronic absenteeism has doubled since the pandemic, and while learning delay seems to be getting better, chronic absenteeism continues to get worse, with 15 million chronically absent students now across the US. And there's definitely a concern that a whole cohort of students may not be fully re-engaging with learning. And the challenge I would place to the folks on the phone is, what role can summer play in getting some of those students re-engaged and beginning to be on a path back? The other final thing that I would say about these 3 challenges is that they're very interrelated. And so students who are struggling with mental health may not want to turn up to school, or maybe struggling to get into school. Students who are chronically absent are going to have more challenges in catching up learning delays. And if your learning delay, if you're feeling like you're behind in class, then that may lead to both mental health challenges, but also to less of a feeling of belonging at school and then further absenteeism. And so any of the solutions that we're putting together really need to address all of these 3 challenges in a holistic way. So moving into the specific results of the survey that we did, maybe click through 2 pages. I think we all know there was a lot of money in ESSER, $190 billion dedicated to education over the 3, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, and with a deadline of September 2024. We talked to districts about how they were doing in spending the ESSER money. And while states had managed mostly to spend their money and mostly on priorities related to learning, learning delay and recovery, what we found when we talked to districts, and this is reflected in the survey of this 260 district administrators, but also very reflected in the day-to-day conversations we have with our district clients, as they're trying to meet these 3 challenges. They're trying to support their students. And they have the money to do so, but that doesn't mean it's easy. And districts really talked about 3 sets of challenges that they were facing in spending this money effectively to support student needs. The first was just administrative hurdles, reporting, compliance, their procurement, delays in receiving funds. The second was talent and vendor availability. We know that there's a huge human capital shortage right now in US schools. There's a desire, for example, to put a social worker in every school, but there just aren't enough social workers out there. There's a desire to have high dosage tutoring and have tutors aligned to students, but finding the tutors is really hard. And then finally, just internal planning capacity. Districts are overwhelmed with all of the different challenges coming out of the pandemic and going forwards, and with being able to find the capacity to actually pull things forwards. And again, here I would say one of the kind of learnings for folks who are partnering with districts is how can you make things as easy as possible for districts? How can you create turnkey solutions? How can you come alongside districts to make their life easier versus harder in this time frame? So given all of this, if we come to the next slide, the portion of funds that have been spent varies significantly by state. You can hop one slide on, maybe a little bit of a lag. The challenge here is a little bit of a reporting challenge. The federal government's reporting of the spending has a little bit of a lag. But it looks now that somewhere between a third and a half of funds have been spent. And that means that there are a lot of funds left to be spent in the next 18 months before the deadline for obligation. Now, we know that Department of Ed has extended the deadline on ESSA1 for actually spending obligated funds. We will see if that's going to happen for ESSA2 and ESSA3, but districts are planning. They need to be planning to be at least thinking about spending the money in the next obligating the money in the next 18 months. And so that really provides 2 summers, this summer and next summer, as opportunities to work at how can some of that funding be used in a way to really support students with all 3 of the challenges we kind of talked about. So the next slide I think is going to be the interesting, if you can move forwards to, then one more. That's the one. Okay, cool. So what we asked districts is, well, what did you spend most money on? What was growing fastest in the past 3 years? So this isn't the absolute amount of spending. It's what they were increasing spending on most quickly. And what do you plan to spend most money on going forwards? And so if you look on the x-axis here, this is what district administrators said they were spending more money on in 19 to 22 compared to previous years. And then on the y-axis, it's what they expect to be spending more money on over the next 3 years in the 2022 to 2025 school year. And so you can see at the top here, things that they were spending more money on, kind of on the far right-hand side of this slide is things that were growing really, really fast in the past 3 years. Substitute compensation, we all know some of the challenges there. Student devices, we had to get devices out to students so that they could learn remotely. Teacher recruitment, given some of the human capital shortages. HVAC and ventilation, because we had a pandemic and we needed to make sure our classrooms were safe. But what's interesting is as you look forwards, these priorities are shifting. And you can see the highest growth expected. It didn't grow very much in the past 3 years, but is expected to grow very high. And this is now kind of looking top down, the things that are most expected to grow fastest. Tutoring, high dosage tutoring right there at the top, given the high evidence of efficacy. And yet, though districts wish to spend more money on it, real struggles in actually getting programs stood up. But then some of the other ones are interesting too. Teacher training, PD, credit recovery, a bunch around special education, behavioral mental health, intervention programs. I would draw your attention to before, after, and summer school is sitting at the low. So fairly flat growth over the past 3 years. And this is, this isn't solid data. This is what district administrators told us. And expecting to grow in the next 3 years, kind of everything is expected to grow between 22 and 25. And then, after we will see. But expected to grow more slowly. And so as you're thinking about partnering with districts, I think the interesting thing to ask yourself is how can you tap into some of the things which districts are growing? So are there ways that you can tap into districts' tutoring programs by offering a summer program that integrates both some really great engagement materials for students during the day that are more social emotional or sports or fun, but then integrate high dosage tutoring into that program, pulling out students for chunks of time in a structured way to then pull into some of this tutoring tailwinds. Similarly, are there things you can do on kind of the behavioral mental health side, on special education side, on credit recovery and intervention? So where are the things where there are existing tailwinds that you can kind of think about pulling into your program to be able to catch the attention of districts? And then finally, and then I'll pass back, Sharonda, to you. We know that there are these tailwinds right now because of ESSA funding. We also know that ESSA funding is coming to an end. And so districts are having to think through, how do they spend the remaining money in a way that doesn't create a fiscal cliff? And so if we hop to the next page, I think districts are having to weigh kind of three considerations as they think about spending their remaining money. One, it needs to address the most urgent COVID-related student needs, and we've kind of talked about what some of those are. But the second is that it needs to plan for funding sustainability, given the one-time nature of the funding. And so districts are moving away from, certainly at this point, hiring new people and towards programs that can be done on a one-time nature, where there isn't then an ongoing funding requirement going forwards. Districts are prioritizing programs that have like an upfront cost, but then can continue with a smaller cost going forwards. And so, you know, an example of that might be transition to Medicaid funding. If you can transition now, there's other funding streams that might come through behind on mental and behavioral health. Districts are trying to prioritize things that upgrade capabilities. And so teacher professional development, but it's been a challenge because of the substitute crisis to actually find the days to actually do that. And then districts are increasingly contracting with outside providers. And so this, again, I think is an opportunity for summer providers for this summer and next summer to provide opportunities for districts that can be one time or two times, but that don't commit them for the longer term. And then finally, creating budget flexibility to respond to new data. Our hypothesis is this time next May, there will be more money left, given the fact that many of the historical kind of plans of districts have challenged to ramp up in time. And so where they might plan to do a large amount of tutoring, maybe they'll do less. And so there's kind of an opportunity both now for this summer and then next May for next summer. And with that, I'd love to hand back over to Sharonda and happy to take any questions after the other panelists.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Emma, for highlighting research from a district perspective. At this time, we're going to transition to Patty and Gil. So Patty and Gil, the question we have for you is, what can you add to the research perspective as we think about this upcoming summer?
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. We're so excited to be here. I'm Patty Allen, Director of Research at ISRI, and here with Dr. Gil Noem. I'm also a mom of two kids, and I couldn't wait to sign them up for summer programming, so that was really exciting. Gil and I are here to share and discuss some of the new data that we have on youth engagement and resilience in the summertime. So just for a little context, hopefully you have the slideshow that we've prepared. If you can go ahead and share that screen, I'll give you a little some of the details. So just for a little context, we're working on a series of studies to understand the summer experiences that can support the social, emotional, and academic well-being of youth. Next slide, please. Last summer, well, I should say the summer before, in summer 2021, we did a national survey of parents and caregivers who had kids in K-12 and summer programs. And going into the future, we're going to be focusing on staff. This year, we wanted to focus on those who have the most expertise in summer. We're talking about the children and youth participating in different kinds of summer opportunities. And so we wanted to lift up these voices, and we focus on three topical areas. One is engagement. So this is referring to, understanding what kids are doing with their time, how they're spending their time, what activities they're doing, what they found most helpful, what they're interested in learning about. The second was resilience. How are you feeling about their summers? Are they feeling motivated? Do they feel listened to? Are they happy with what's going on? And do they feel like they're growing over the course of the summer? And the third was around empowerment. Did you feel like you had you could make decisions about how you're spending time in the summer? Did you have access to the things that you really wanted to do? Obviously, we won't have time to go into all the details, but there is a great reader-friendly report that will be on the NSLA's website, so you can get into all the different nitty-gritty details. And I will try to focus on some of the high-level findings here for today. Next slide, please. So first, just a word about our methods. We did a national survey of 2,068 youth. This represents all 50 states, including Washington, D.C. And there were, by design, 50% in structured experiences and 50% in unstructured experiences. And I want to unpack that for a moment. That was intentional because we want to get a sense of what are the experiences of kids who are engaging in summer camps, programs, schools, whether optional or mandatory, work, summer jobs, internships, these sort of adults facilitated or adults supervised activities that have a routine and a schedule versus something else, being more casual and leisurely, just to have a point of comparison. Next slide, please. So just lifting up some of the really important findings that we had here, especially on the topic of thinking about promotion of mental health and socio-emotional well-being. One of the things that we found, to orient you to this graph, blue is for the structured summer experiences, orange for the unstructured summer experiences. What we found is that kids that were in structured experiences less often experienced negative emotions like loneliness and sadness and anger and lack of motivation relative to students in unstructured experiences. They also felt more listened to. Next slide, please. Now, this one's kind of a lot to take in, but what I'll do is orient you. So we're thinking about socio-emotional growth and across different resiliencies like quality of relationships with peers and adults, empathy and optimism and assertiveness, ability to speak up. If you look at this graph, basically the blue and orange circles, the further to the right, the more higher percentage of youth are reporting positive change. And we've kind of broken it out by different demographic groups. So long story short, the further to the right, kind of the better. And we're seeing a lot more blue there than we are seeing orange, suggesting that kids that are in these structured experiences are reporting more growth in these different areas for 9 out of the 10 resiliencies that we measured. The one exception was emotion control, where only about 50% of youth in structured and unstructured experiences were reporting change in their ability to kind of regulate their emotions and kind of stress and anger. This is consistent with a lot of the conversations that we've been having with program leaders and staff around behavioral kind of challenges and things that have been coming up. Next slide, please. When we ask kids in their own words, what's the most helpful thing to learn? What are you most interested in doing? What we found is that all these different things related to socio-emotional skills. So just to point out, the number one thing that was most helpful to learn, kids talked about how to better deal with my daily challenges, or how to respect others and not judge, or how to work as a team at my job, and how to make new friends, how to be comfortable around a group of people, how to be independent. So this is right up there with the academic skills and a whole bunch of other themes that were identified in the data, but 44.5% of 2,000 or more kids reported things like that. So thinking about that in the design of programming, regardless of the focus and the content area. So that's another thing I want to look up. And then next slide, please. So before I hand it off to Dr. Noem, I just wanted to make 2 points. One of which is this was a correlational study and it's not causal. And so more research really is needed to unpack what makes these structured, what is it about these structured programs, camps, programs that are really having a positive impact on kids' perceptions of the summer. There's something there. We need to figure out what it is so that we can do more of it. Number 2, and I didn't have slides on this, but thinking about the different perceptions that youth have based on their demographic backgrounds. So we had information about grade and gender, race and ethnicity, income status. And what we found is that kids had different experiences, especially female identifying, lower income youth, youth of color, and kids in older grades tended to have less positive perceptions of summer relative to the comparison group. So that's something also to think about in the design. For example, thinking about COVID-19, the pandemic, more Black and Hispanic youth were concerned about the pandemic than their white peers. As another example, lower income youth across the board rated the outcomes that all the questions that we asked about lower than high-income youth. So thinking about the design of this program, of any kind of program or internship job, or summer experiences, even at home for families that are doing things outside of structured activities, just taking that into account. And so with that, I want to pass it on to my boss, my colleague, Dr. Gil Nilm, to kind of talk about next steps.
Thank you, Patty. Can you hear me? Yeah, you can. Okay. This was amazing, whirlwind, and yet all kind of clear. I want to just call out NSLA and Aaron, my colleague and friend and former student. We have gone a long way, but I just want to mention that these reports that we conducted, and hopefully the last one on staff that we will conduct, we have some Harvard students right now to actually do some preliminary work. They're only possible because Aaron made them possible through funding, through NSLA. So thank you so much for that. I think what I want to focus on is some solutions that come out of this, and I know I have only limited time. So what I think this all speaks to is that we have to build on the considerable strengths that staff bring to the summer in summer learning. And the reason why I'm saying that is the results speak for themselves. These are amazing results. I want to underline this because this is a representative sample. This isn't just like anyone who comes and you get like a selection bias. This is really an attempt to get comparisons between those people who send their children to summer programs and those who don't. And the results are clear, super clear. Those kids who are going to summer programs are doing better socio-emotionally, perceive themselves as stronger, perceive themselves better equipped for the school year. The same thing the parents told us last year. So I think this is really important for us to have evidence and to get more funders and corporations and so on into the mix, also more school districts. But it also shows, the studies also show that there is a lot to go. There's a lot more necessary. There is the need to bring more people into summer programs. There's a need to work on the discrepancies that Patty mentioned at the end, that are very serious and very troublesome, that this is really all connected also to socioeconomic class and race, and those kids who are white and who are young and who get the highest amount of support are also the ones who are doing best. And so we have to actually reorganize ourselves. And I think the way to do that is to start thinking about staff training. Like, in other words, a way in which we can take the things where they are right now and get more young people to those outcomes we want to reach, namely to be strong, thriving, motivated to learn. In order to do this during that time, and I'm going back to Emma's presentation, we have 16 million kids, and that's a very conservative number because the epidemiological number is actually much higher. That is 20% of young people in the US have psychiatric issues that need to be addressed, even disorders. So that is more than 16 million, but the 60 million might be kind of the increase through COVID, but that's a huge amount of young people. Summer has a really big role to play, but I don't think as a kind of mental health center, I'm not suggesting that everyone should become a clinic kind of during the summer, but I am suggesting that the staff have to know more about mental health issues and have to be, because they are engaged with young people, have to connect with young people in a way that doesn't say, no, I'm not going to talk to anything that has to do with trauma and your mental health issues. That's for a clinician, because we don't have enough clinicians, but at the same time, stay to be youth workers and not clinicians. So how do we do that? Please, if you go to the next slide. Okay, so I want to show you a resiliency model, and I can do that very fast. We have to, in these times, address the issue that there aren't those people who need mental health supports and those who don't. We have to say that we live in an adverse world, and in this adversity, we can either say adversity leads to clinical issues, or we can say adversity is the foundation for development. And when young people come to us in the summer, let's just acknowledge that many of them, most of them, and even the educators are coming out of COVID and have many other challenges. So let's embrace the challenges, because those people who grow are often the people who grow because they're addressing their adversity. Adversity can create creativity, but you need programs. We show that in the results, but you also need a paradigm shift where we say, okay, let's start with the fact that there are things that people will struggle with, and let's get ready. So the typical model of resiliency is that you get distracted, you get pushed off the path, and then you bounce back. That's the dictionary definition. I want to show you exactly. Here it is. A different model. One more. You can click one more. Okay, so you have it all. So you face adversity. Doesn't have to be an atomic bomb like this seems to imply, but you get thrown off. And in the process of throwing off, you are actually building new perspectives, new skills, new empathy. And that's exactly what summer programs and after-school programs in schools should do and often do. And then you don't just bounce back, but you bounce forward. Now, I don't have a slide for the next thing I want to tell you because I wanted to keep it short, and I think I'm only half successful, but I will stop in 1 minute. Out of this comes a NSLA Pair ISRI goal, and we've begun to do some fundraising around it. We want to offer as a developmental resiliency certificate for summer learning staff. And what does that really mean? It means a 4-part series on the research foundations on resiliency, which by now is a 50-year, very detailed history of very good research that includes thriving and SEL. We want to, second, have practices of developmental resiliency. How do you actually engage and deal with the adversity to turn it into strengths? Third, what is academic developmental resiliency? We want to actually focus for out-of-school time on academic development. And we want to have tools such as apps and assessments to enhance developmental resiliency. We want to begin with a cohort this summer, 12 hours altogether. People can go through this and then become trainers over time. And we will send details and hope that we can make the setting of the summer be what it is, but at the same time, open up to its mental health issues without making it mental health. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Patty and Gil, for adding to our research perspective and for highlighting the role of structured youth engagement opportunities. So now, Kate and Eric, as we transition to a policy perspective from the role of your organizations, what do we need to know for summer learning as it pertains to policy?
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Clabaugh. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the National Parent Teacher Association, PTA. We are the oldest child advocacy association in America. Our mission is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. I also am a former club kid, so shout out to all the clubs here. Thank you to all the trusted adults throughout my childhood who helped me champion and find my passion through youth sports and other great activities. So in partnership with the CDC Foundation, National PTA conducted a series of parent mindset surveying throughout the 21-22 school year related to COVID-19. Do parents feel comfortable having their child back in the classroom, et cetera? The return to school, and also, of course, mental health. Our last data released from that school year and ahead of summer 2022 found that parents wanted to relax. If you all recall, that was the first full school year that children were back at school, and families need a little bit of a break. We've all been through a lot during COVID, parents, teachers, children alike. But they also really want to focus the summer helping their child academically and also seeking mental health resources. 78% strongly or somewhat agreed. All I care about this summer is having a relaxing summer with my family. 69% strongly or somewhat agreed. This summer, it is important for me to work with my child on subjects they struggled with during the school year. 46% of parents strongly or somewhat agreed. Over the summer, I plan to seek out support or resources to help my child's social and emotional well-being. What's interesting about that is parents were most interested in group activities to support their child's social and emotional well-being over the summer. When asked what mental health supports or resources they wanted the most, 77% of parents reported that they were very interested in group summer programming for children, such as summer camps, field trips, sports teams. And this was the highest ranking resource that they identified, even above seeking direct individual support from school counselors, psychologists, or social workers. Bottom line, parents want their kids to have fun. They want them to keep learning, and they want them to feel safe and supported over the summer months. They also want the time and space to be together as a whole family. So I encourage all of you to think about family nights or how you're engaging either younger or older siblings and inviting parents into your programs to be part of it. Ahead of this summer, National PTA will continue this research and really look at parent perceptions around summer learning options and how best parents can be communicated to about those opportunities that are available in their community. We also urge summer learning providers to reach out to educators and school administrators now and really start those conversations around parent and family engagement ahead of the summer, especially for those students who may need more time to catch up. But families are looking for alternative options, perhaps, to just the traditional school, summer school, or high dosage tutoring alone that may be provided by districts. We don't want students to feel punished over the summer. All students right now need extra support in the aftermath of school closures amidst COVID-19. But kids should still be able to be kids and have access to the support they need in rediscovering their love and joy in learning. National PTA is considering summer 2023 really a critical intervention in terms of academic recovery. We need this time to support all families and students in that recovery. Department of Education, Congress, and all of our K-12 partners have never been talking about summer learning more, and we're so excited to be here at the table. I echo Ann's sentiments from the Wallace Foundation. Invite your members of Congress to your summer programs if they can see it firsthand, if they can talk to the kids, if they can talk to the parents about how important these opportunities are. It makes our job in DC that much easier. So I thank NSLA, I thank the department, and I will pass it over to my good friend and colleague, Eric Peterson at the After School Alliance.
Thanks so much, Kate. Thank you, Sharonda. Thank you, Aaron, NSLA. We're wrapping up here, so I'll just be brief. We all know that young people need support year-round, and that includes, of course, the summer months, which are critical. But just want to share a little bit of data from the After School Alliance as well. 83% of voters in a poll we did this past election said that summer and after school programs are an absolute necessity for their community. 78% wanted their local governments to invest some of their COVID relief funds into summer and after school programs, and similar numbers in terms of school district funds. Parents, our parent survey from last fall, 62% said they were concerned about summer programs being too expensive. 43% concerned that there weren't programs available in their community. 43% had concerns with location or transportation. Echoing what Sharonda said earlier, kicking us all off as well as our other esteemed panelists. Tremendous challenges out there. We know that additional funding and policy changes won't solve all those challenges, but we do know that funding, echoing Kate and also Anne from the Wallace Foundation, there is funding available. We know Title I, 21st Century Community Learning Centers, AmeriCorps, Child Care Development Fund, and other critical funding supports for summer learning continue to need to be increased, and that's a priority for us. But also the COVID relief dollars that were mentioned, really making a difference. We've tracked $5 billion in the last 2 years that have been used for after school and summer. There's tremendous resources, tools rather, out there to help tap into those resources to help facilitate some of those partnerships at the local level. And we know that the momentum, as has been mentioned, extends even from the federal government to all levels of government. So at the state level, advocates are working in 20 states right now where governors have introduced proposed increases for summer funding and or after school funding in their budgets, as well as pending legislation. Locally, mayors continue to access the fiscal recovery funds from the American Rescue Plan, which we haven't talked about a lot today, but those actually go to 2026. So a little more of a runway there as well. And the map, which I think will be linked in the chat that we've done in partnership with the National League of Cities, really shows hundreds of examples we'd like to add to that map. If your program isn't on there and you're using any kind of fiscal COVID recovery funds to support quality after school or summer learning programs, love to be able to add that too as another example. And while federal policy and the funding landscape at the federal level is kind of challenging right now, we know that there's still the need to explain the need and impact. And so the site visits are critical, as have been mentioned. If you do one thing this summer, I'd say plan ahead to invite a policymaker from the state or local or federal level to visit. And there is hope at the federal level. Just last week, the director of the Alabama Expanded Learning Alliance testified in front of the House Labor HHS Education Appropriations Subcommittee about the need to increase support for the 21st Century Community Learning Centers funding to provide more summer programs for students in need. So collect the data and stories, track your progress, host policymakers, and really lift up youth voice. My last plug is we're actually celebrating Youth Voice Week, which is an initiative led by the Youth of After School Ambassadors at After School Alliance. It's all week, and you can join them through our website in lifting your voice to help expand these resources. And I'll throw it back to you, Sharonda, to finish this out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to Emma, Gil, Patty, Kate, and Eric. I want to thank each of you for joining us today as speakers to share insight on summer learning from both a research and a policy perspective. I trust that the insight and data that you have shared will be critical to all of us as we prepare to make summer 2023 the best summer yet for all of our students nationwide. And with that, Aaron, back to you.
Wow, right on time. Well delivered, Sharonda. That was amazing. Thank you to all the panelists and the great speakers and for all your leadership and resources and partnership you've shared. I think I'll just say one thing that has just jumped out here is the moment of opportunity that's really exciting for all of us is we have a research base. We could do more, but from Gil and Emma, we have a handle on what is going on, what the student needs are, what the family and school demand is. You heard from the PTA and from Kate, what they're doing. And then we also hear from a policy, we have so many policy leaders at every level who are focused on this and making dollars available. So if we have programs that are well run and designed, and we have the research to show us how to improve and what works, and if we actually have the dollars, then it's incumbent upon us to tie all these resources together and make sure more kids and families can access them. And that's what we're keep focusing on and what we're going to help each other do. So I'm leaving this session very inspired, and I will move us to a little transition to our next session. Oh, we're going to take a second of a break, and we're going to give everybody a chance to stretch their legs, and then we're going to come back for our next exciting session, which is really going to get into the details of school community partnerships and how do we make those work. So everyone take 1 minute break, and we will start up very shortly.